James and his wife Kay lived in Tyler, Texas. They'd been married for 48 years and first met at Club James owned. One night, after coming home from a poker game, James got up for a drink and suddenly grabbed his chest. He said it felt like heartburn. Kay insisted they go to the ER at Christus Mother Frances Hospital. Doctors examined him and said he needed heart surgery. Kay wasn't scared. She'd had a similar operation before. The surgery was high risk, but common in 2017, and the benefits were greater than the risks. James had the operation, and the surgeon said it went well. He was moved to the Kwiku Cardiovascular ICU. Kay spoke with him briefly, told him he'd feel much better in a few months, kissed him goodnight, and said, "I'll see you tomorrow." During the night, James had a sudden neurological problem. Tests showed he'd had a stroke. Early the next morning, the hospital called Kay. A nurse told her that the staffs did everything they could, but James didn't make it. Kay was shocked. She'd been told he was doing fine. She felt like half of a pair of bookends, with the other one suddenly gone. Months later, Kay still had no clear answer for what caused the stroke that led to her husband's death. 7 months after James's death, Christus Mother Frances Hospital treated 68-year-old Ronald Clark. He was scheduled for heart surgery. The pre-op team checked him and said he was healthy enough for the procedure. The surgery went well. Ronald woke up and talked with his daughter, who planned to visit him the next day. But during the night, he had an unexplained neurological problem. Staff reintubated him and briefly stabilized him, but he later passed away. James and Ronald's deaths were months apart, so no one was suspicious at first. Then 47-year-old Christopher Greenaway came to the same hospital for a preventative heart bypass. He was a great candidate, and staff expected a full recovery. After surgery, Chris was in the Kwiku. He was awake and talking, even asking for a steak and wanting to walk. The primary nurse felt things were stable enough to step out for lunch, leaving Chris with another nurse. While the first nurse was returning in the elevator, an alarm sounded. Code blue for Chris's room. Staff rushed in, stabilized him, reintubated him, and took him for a CT scan. The scan showed air in and around the brain, a very rare complication. The most likely cause was the arterial line, a tube placed in an artery to monitor blood pressure. If air enters that line, it can travel to the brain and cause a stroke. Hospital staff now realized something was wrong with the arterial lines. 2 days later, Christopher Greenaway died. This was the third unexplained death in 8 months. A medical expert said this shouldn't happen. Not this often, unless there's some outside cause. The hospital began a full review. They checked every step of how arterial lines are used, from insertion to discharge, to make sure the equipment wasn't the problem. They also installed cameras on the Kwiku floors to see what was really happening. But the strange events kept happening, sometimes twice a month, sometimes once a month. The hospital's mood changed. Trust broke down. It turned into nurses versus doctors. Nurses thought something was going wrong in the operating room. Doctors and surgeons believed the problem was on the unit floor where nurses care for patients. In January 2018, 58-year-old Joseph Colino was admitted for an emergency heart surgery. The operation went well, and the day shift in the ICU reported he was recovering. During the night shift, alarms suddenly went off. Nurses rushed in. Joseph's heart rate was very fast, and his blood pressure was very low. They stabilized him and sent him for an MRI, which showed massive strokes on both sides of his brain. He stayed in the ICU for several days, then was transferred to long-term rehab. Once again, it looked like air had entered his system, possibly through an arterial line. The next day, hospital leaders and security reviewed surveillance video from the night of Joseph's stroke. They hoped to prove no person was involved. At 1:22 a.m., Joseph's alarms went off and multiple staff members ran to his room. Looking 5 minutes earlier, the footage showed a nurse entering Joseph's room, staying about a minute, then leaving and standing at the nurse's station, watching the monitors while others responded. The nurse was identified as Will Davis. On a replay from another angle, Will Davis was seen leaving a supply room. When the clip was slowed, he appeared to be holding a syringe. Less than 2 minutes later, Joseph had his unexplained event. The video raised serious concerns that Joseph's crisis might have been caused by a person, not an accident. Hospital records showed the most recent unexpected stroke happened 2 months earlier. The patient was Pamela Henderson, a 63-year-old retired nurse. She and her husband were ready to enjoy retirement, but she needed surgery first. The surgery went well, and Pam seemed to be recovering. She was chatting with nurses. Then, suddenly, Pam couldn't speak and wouldn't open her eyes. Staff stabilized her and ran tests. A CT scan showed small pockets of air in her brain, enough to cause a stroke. Pam survived, but she was left barely able to walk and unable to care for herself. The hospital reviewed video footage and saw Will Davis entering Pam's room shortly before a sudden decline. Until then, she'd been doing fine. Administrators began to identify possible victims and compared staff schedules with each abnormal event from the past year. Every incident happened on the QICU at night, on days Will Davis was on duty. With that information, the hospital suspended Will Davis pending an internal investigation. So who is Will Davis? William George Davis was born on February 3, 1984, in Longview, Texas. He grew up in a stable home with loving parents. Will did well in school, played football, had many friends, and people thought he was funny and charming. After high school, he went to nursing school and became a registered nurse at Christus Mother Frances Hospital in Tyler, Texas. Could this friendly, successful nurse be involved in patients dying too soon? After Will was suspended, hospital leaders interviewed other nurses and searched medical records. They were hoping to clear him. Many nurses said Will seemed good and helpful. But one nurse reported a troubling moment. She said she saw Will in a patient's room with a syringe attached to the patient's arterial line. On January 26, Hospital Associate Vice President Deb Chalet received a call from none other than Will Davis.
My mind is like baffled by this whole thing. I'm like, I've never been in a situation like this before, so I guess I'm kind of confused and I don't know what to say really. So I didn't know, am I the only one that's being done like this, or is there other people, or is that, I just don't understand it.
Yeah, and so that I can't respond to. I can't really give you any additional details at this point. I can tell you that everybody is committed to getting the investigation done very, very quickly.
I know the situation here is totally off limits, but I didn't know in general if I just not talk to anybody from the hospital, period, regardless of what it is, or...
Yeah, no, right now, I think you need to refrain from talking to anyone. HR is always open for you to talk to. That's the only person that you're okay to talk to right now, though.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
All right, thanks, Will. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
For days later, the hospital invites Davis to discuss what happened inside Joseph Kalina's room.
We just want to get to where we can nail down what happened.
Okay. Let's say we'll start square one. I'm just going to kind of go from the beginning. And, I had patients in 18, 19, and 20.
Yeah.
Which was right next to 21, obviously, the patient we're discussing. Then went next door to help Lacey with some labs.
Okay.
And usually most time, we all look out for each other. So he'll say, hey, can you listen out? Just make sure, especially with it being a fresh heart patient. And anyway, I heard IV beeping.
Mm-hmm.
I walked in the room to see what it was. Even the patient had asked me, he said, hey, what's that beeping? Flushed the line and the blood cleared out and everything.
Okay.
After that, everything looked good. I walked out of the room and that was all I did, When there were good intentions, did everything I was supposed to do that I would normally do with any other patient or even my patients for that matter.
How quickly do you feel like you were at his bedside once you knew something was going on and there to participate and to help?
I just went down the hall immediately to go down there and look and see what's going on.
When you got to the room, did you say, guys, I was just in here, 5 minutes ago, flushed his line, I reset the pump, he was talking
to me.
That part I didn't say, and I wish I would have said.
The surveillance footage contradicts Will's version of events. He did not immediately go to Joseph's room. He sat by the monitor and watched Joseph's vitals. As he had the event, he waited nearly 3 minutes before intervening. Deb called the police next. A detective from the Tyler Police Department was assigned to the case. The detectives and hospital staff worked together, each using their expertise to build a strong investigation. They met to review the unusual deaths, and they compared Will Davis's statement with what the new surveillance cameras showed. The two did not match. At that time, they believed there could be up to 7 possible victims. While detectives were planning how to interview Will, he called them first.
Yeah, hey, Will, how you doing, man?
And my baby was sick yesterday. My little girl was sick.
How old is
my
she?
dad. She's doing okay. She's doing a lot better. She just got a bunch of that sinus head cold stuff. We're dealing with the thing with the hospital. I meet with them a couple times, and then next thing I know, I'm getting terminated. So I'm just like that. Without any kind of explanation. I don't appreciate that kind of, that's not professional. I feel like I didn't do anything wrong, and I don't know what they're even accusing me of doing.
Well, Davis has a wife and 2 kids, one of which was an infant. He tried to paint the picture of a family man who was just trying to provide for his family. Police reached out to a radiology associates to find a neuroradiologist who could serve as an expert. A doctor agreed and reviewed the full medical records of the possible victims. The doctor explained that the arterial line monitor shows a waveform. To most people, it looks like random squiggles, but to medical staff, it tracks a patient's blood pressure and heartbeat. In these cases, the waveform showed sudden flat sections. He said those flat plateaus matched the moment air was pushed into the arterial line. With those exact times in hand, investigators went back to the security videos to see who was in each room at those moments. The footage showed Will Davis entering the rooms right when the waveforms indicated air was injected. This video evidence was key because it matched the injection times to Will's movements, down to the camera timestamps. Back at the police station, a detective calls Davis to discuss another possible victim patient, Christopher Greenaway.
Will, you there?
Yes, sir.
Hey, this is Detective Roberts. What's going on? There was this Christopher Greenaway case. Did you have any care with Christopher at all?
The only thing I remember about that patient there, I know he was a young guy. I want to say
like 47. Did you check his art line? Did you see if it was wrapped right? Anything you remember about that?
I can't remember if I went. Because the only thing I can remember him doing, he said that one of the IVs might.
Take your time. I'd rather you just tell me things you remember than make something up. Don't do that.
The only thing I really can remember, to be honestly about it, I flushed the line.
Will just place himself in contact with Christopher's arterial line. Detectives called and asked the hospital if there had been any new incidents since Will Davis was suspended. The answer confirmed their suspicions. After Will was sent home and not allowed to work, the unexplained stroke stopped. With a search warrant, investigators went to Will's home. They seized computers and phones and did a forensic review. On one text thread with another nurse, Will said he was going to work that night. She replied, "Try not to kill anybody." Will answered, "They don't call me the closer for nothing." When police interviewed that nurse, she said it was dark humor and that she had no idea Will might be involved in anything criminal. On Will's computer, detectives found searches about what happens when air is introduced into an Enforce system. They also found searches about well-known serial killers, likely comparing his own body count to others. After that, police invited Will to station.
Stand up for me. Need you to turn around for me. Put your hands right here. Listen up. We're going to put these on you. Okay. Got a warrant for your arrest.
When the news reported Will's arrest, Kay, James's widow, noticed the story sounded just like what happened to her husband. She called Tyler police to tell them about James's case. However, investigators said they didn't have enough evidence to charge Will with James's death. While Will Davis waited in jail for trial, detectives and prosecutors tried to figure out why he did it. Will's early life didn't fit the usual picture of a serial killer. His mother said they were a good, loving family. But people who knew him as a kid remembered his father was very controlling and pushed Will to feel he had to be better than everyone. Those traits seemed to rub off on Will. A cousin of Will's former girlfriend said Will was controlling. He wanted to know where she was at all times and made her feel like she was a problem. The family got a restraining order because of his behavior, and Will reportedly tried to ram his car into their house afterward. Beyond this need for control, investigators couldn't find a clear motive. Still, a motive isn't required to get a conviction. In September 2021, Will Davis went on trial for murder and aggravated assault. The jury heard that he injected air into patients' arterial lines, which can cause severe brain damage. There were up to 12 possible victims. During testimony from doctors and victims, Will sat still and emotionless, showing no remorse. After a 2-week trial, William George Davis was found guilty of killing John Lafferty, Ronald Clark, Christopher Greenaway, and Joseph Kalina. The first 3 were attacked in 2017. Kalina was attacked in 2018 and died 2 years later. At sentencing, prosecutors also presented evidence that Davis may have killed Perry Frank, James Sanders, and James Blanks, and that he tried to kill Gary Parker, Pamela Henderson, Ricky Glenn, James Wages, and Jesus Serrano. The judge sentenced Will Davis to death. Detectives and medical staff felt relieved that the case brought some closure to families. That night, Will's wife called him and demanded the truth.
But I need to know, was there even the slightest bit that what any of the prosecution side was true about you? Anything with any kind of intent?
No malicious, nothing.
So even if you can't admit it to yourself, we're not looking to give yourself an answer, but we need something for your kids.
I'm not gonna lie, I couldn't afford to be off. I couldn't afford to be called off, and I tried to make sure people stayed ICU a little bit longer, just a little bit longer, so that our numbers would work out, so that I could work.
Will later said he harmed patients because he needed money, but investigators proved that was not true. Kay Blank said it's terrible to lose a loved one, and even worse to learn someone chose to take their life. Despite 4 murder convictions, the story didn't end there. In 2022, at age 38, Will Davis gave a media interview where he talked about his motives and more.
I forgot my suit. My suit wasn't tailored in time. I'm sorry.
Okay. Hi, Will.
Hi, Dr. Fox.
Hello. You can call me Brianna.
Brianna?
Yes. Thank you for having me. One thing I really wanted to talk to you about was, your childhood. I think that was maybe one of the first times that you started feeling a lot of anxiety and depression.
Depression. I had a lot of depression in the fall of 2002. Went to Kilgore College. I felt like there was no hope in life. I didn't know what I wanted to do for a career. I went to the doctor at that time for that, and he had prescribed me, I guess, SSRI for depression, and then I wasn't on it very long, and after that, and then it's when I tried to run my truck into a tree, committed suicide, and had just a bunch of different acts like that weren't good. They said I was bipolar, put me on Depakote and lithium at that time. To be honest, I don't feel like I never really thought I was bipolar, but I know they had mentioned bipolar. I never went back to get on that medication. I just kind of more or less turned into a anti-anxiety, antidepressive type.
What, if any, financial stressors did you have, and when did they begin?
I'm going to be honest, I'm horrible when it comes to finances. When I became a nurse, I already had built up debt. I paid my bills on time. It's just what the problem was over time, I started suffocating myself with so much stuff where I'm just basically paying the minimum payment just to keep my credit good each month. You're just overwhelmed, stressed. You think there's no hope. There's no way out of this. How am I going to, what have I done to myself?
And all of these financial pressures, can you explain mentally, where you were at while you were going through them?
Well, I was taking Lexapro for depression, and then I stopped taking the Lexapro about April of 17. I was having sexual side effects from it. And so it was very hard as a man. Your pride, your confidence, everything, it's like, oh my gosh, what in the world's going on? It's and so I stopped taking it. The first incident was, I think, June 15th. But prior to that, I had gotten called off a couple different times. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going in overtime. They need to call me off, let somebody else go in. So I thought, okay, well, that's fine. But then when I got to work, the next time I go to work, my coworkers would say, hey, Will, what were you at last night? It's upset. Well, I got called off. I was, they said I was going to be in overtime, so they had to call me off. And they said, well, man, we could have used you last night. We got hammered, they were basically stressed out, low staff. So I'm like, so it just started building in my mind. It really made me, I got really angry. My coworkers are sitting here struggling.
I think that for a lot of people, you're, this young, upstanding nurse, citizen, and then this thing happens.
If I go ahead and explain, I think I guess if I can explain.
Please.
From the first, like I said, started in June 2017, Mr. Sanders, the very first patient that night, everything started going through my head, like about everything. It's like I was upset at the hospital, more the upper people, because I feel like, they're up here sitting in the office, getting bonuses, taking and putting all these orders out for us to do all these things, and they don't even know how hard what we're really doing, and they're not down here with us. I had to go check a blood sugar. He was on an insulin drip. And when I went in there, it's like I didn't even see like the patient, Mr. Sanders. I didn't even see Mr. Sanders. It's like Mr. Sanders is there, but my head is somewhere else. I had a flush in my pocket. I had to check a blood sugar, so you have to use the arterial line for that. I took the syringe, how to explain it exactly. I pulled it back. I put it back on there, and I pushed it in there. And while I was doing this, I'm getting this euphoria. There's like this exhilarating force going through like my body in my head, and I'm just like, this feeling like I'm out of this world. You're thinking, oh my gosh, almost like a drug, like you're getting a high off a drug or something. But then that feeling afterwards, whenever people would come rushing in, or you'd have the code button going off and people would rush in, you would get like, it would amplify that feeling I had. It gave me this control, the power, that euphoria that went through, that exhilarating rush that goes through your body. After Mr. Sanders, the next night was Mr. Lafferty. I would walk in, go in, do the same thing. And even afterwards, having that peace and that calm, it's like I didn't worry about bills. I didn't think about money. I didn't think about the stresses of life. It was like I just kind of relaxed. But then thereafter, it really became more of an addiction. It's horrible. I don't even like talking about it. It's horrible.
One question that I was wondering, now is the opportunity, if there's any other families or any other people that you want to, I would say, confess or like have absolution, get off your chest.
There was the 96-year-old elderly lady in 2016. I did fail to mention her. Now, that was more of a mercy thing. She was 96. She was a DNR, do not resuscitate. She was basically end of life. It's hard to sit there and watch her suffering.
Can you just tell me really quickly more about that? So that was the first time, and how did you go about that?
So basically, I gave her potassium chloride to stop her heart. I gave her pain medicine so she'd be comfortable. I shouldn't have played God. I should have done that. That was wrong. But it was hard watching her suffer. I do believe that maybe by doing that, it might have opened a door that I shouldn't have opened.
And this is my last question. You mentioned it earlier, but do you believe that you're going to heaven?
I do. I've been, I feel like, Jesus, I've turned my life around back to him. I focus on the Lord, and he's forgiven me. So
that was all I had. I'm sorry it went so fast. Well,
I know it was quick. I was hoping to get that, that off my chest.